Speaking of boomy authoritative. Okay, we're going. We're live.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Go ahead,
2016. Jenny. Geeks with Gray Hair are back. This is our first episode for 2016 season. And today we're going to be talking about social fandom and tech platforms, where we think it's the best way to reach fans in the geek world. But in the meantime, one thing I do want to do quickly, because we haven't talked since December, Jonathan, is do a quick roll call of any particular campaigns that we think have done a great job recently, especially over the holidays. We talked Star Wars ad nauseum, so anything besides
We're not
Star
talking
Wars.
Star Wars. Right. Not talking Star Wars. Go first. I want to see what you come up with.
Well, I've got two. So one that I was really impressed with that I liked the home end campaign for was Ant-Man. I think they did a great job of subsisting under the radar of the normal Marvel machine. And one of the pieces that I liked in particular was that they had some exclusive footage that they were able to release just to particular fandoms. So it wasn't IGN, it wasn't the normal, comicbookresource.com. It was to some specific fandom sites and Twitter accounts that got the quote unquote exclusive footage. So I liked that. The other end of the spectrum that I am surprisingly not impressed with so far is the Captain America Winter Soldier, whose side are you on? Yes, I read Civil War. I loved it. I think that the philosophical, everything that's involved in it is amazing, but I'm not impressed with the campaign. And when you compare it with what Deadpool's done, it comes off looking pretty lame from a fan standpoint.
You mentioned Deadpool, and Deadpool was one of the things that I had mentioned last year I was being concerned about, whether they were going to be able to pull it off. And I think they've done a great job. We'll see what happens this weekend.
Right.
And I just came out of a meeting where there was an argument whether it was going to be 70 or 100 million opening weekend in the States. That's
sure, whatever.
I won't be as a Disney shareholder, I won't be disappointed if that happens, but I would be really surprised if that happened.
I know, right? And the irony is that it's at that point, Kyle, hi guys. I'll be really surprised at that point if the difference between 70 and 100 is delineated as a success or failure, because you can't hold Deadpool up to even Ant-Man for that matter. Certainly not Captain America or Avengers.
Jenny, I lost you for a second. There was some jumble. Can you, between 70 and 100, what did you say?
Oh, I don't know if that delineation, I don't know if that delineation is going to be really what they consider to be a success or failure, depending upon if it's 70 or 100. It's not Avengers. And it's certainly not Star Wars. So 70 is respectable and a great number for Deadpool, but maybe they'd consider that to be a failure.
Yeah, if you go by what my concern was when I mentioned it, my concern was that it was because the character is sort of not well known and is similar, I guess, to Howard the Duck and what a horrible bomb Howard the Duck was. As long as it does better than Howard the Duck, I'm cool.
Then I think we're in good, right?
But we're okay. We're okay.
All right. So having covered those, let's talk about some of the technologies that we think are the best platforms to reach the current social fandom. I would like to start with the fact that the given here, and Jonathan, you just went audio only, but the given here is that obviously we're looking for where's the best audience for the content first. That is, if any of you all heard our blab last year, one of the top 10 commandments. It's one of the first one or two things you do is establish where your audience is. And so therefore, what platform is the best one to approach your audience for? However, having said that, I think that there are some better platforms than other right now. Certainly historically, we're at the biggest choice of platforms we've ever been able to have to approach and reach fans and engage them for a sustained amount of time, not shilling, but for a sustained amount of time. So obviously one of the best platforms for many of the studios and the product brands has been Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. But Jonathan, I wanted to talk a little bit about why do we think those are beneficial going forward? Or is Facebook maybe not as good since it's aging for the geek social fandom?
For Facebook, I think that in terms of sharing video, I think it's only going to become stronger.
You think the native video is going to make that big a difference?
I think that the ability to share video quickly, and depending on how marketers or IP owners leverage video, I think that works. I think that if you look at what Facebook is doing with their instant articles, I think there's a huge opportunity to do storytelling, and it always comes back to storytelling.
Right, for us especially. That's our thing.
And yeah, Steve asked the question, is Twitter out of those three in your opinion? I don't think that it's out of the top three. It all depends on how it's leveraged. If all that Twitter is used for is to say, hey, check out the new trailer or the new or the casting or this or that, then it doesn't excite me, and I think people are going to get bored by that, and you're not going to see the interaction rates, or the studios aren't going to see the interaction rates, and so therefore they're going to poo-poo it. Whereas if the studios are smart about it, or if the IP owners, I'm going to stop saying studios because I think
because we're talking about abroad, and we should establish that.
We're talking about comic books. We're talking about
exactly, and it's a broad spectrum that whenever we're talking about social fandom, it's a broad spectrum of gaming, video games, comic books, TV, film, home end, etc.
And based on a conversation we had a little bit yesterday, and that we're going to be talking about at Comic Fest this weekend, the fact that sports fandom and social is playing a huge thing. When we talk about, I'm going off topic here, so I won't. But just as a thought, Arsenal with how great they are with social fandom. Also,
you just had to stick Arsenal in there, didn't you?
But also Bundesliga, Wolfsburg. Was it Wolfsburg that just hired their first E player?
Yep. It is. And go ahead.
Steve, we're not just covering, I'm sorry, you might have said this before, we're not just covering the small independents or studios. We're covering a bunch of things. And when I first started saying I don't want to talk about studios is because I believe that what needs to happen is that great, enjoy it while it lasts.
And I am a Chelsea fan, so
I hope that Kane doesn't get hurt or else Tottenham's done. But anyway,
Spursy, so Spursy.
I think that a lot of it needs to. I think a lot of this needs to be considered by the IP owners. And that we can't be thinking about fandom managed from just the big player perspective. And I believe that anybody that has an IP of any worth is capable of creating their own environment on social. And so when we get back to talking about the social platforms, which is the theme of this, it's all like we need to be thinking in those terms.
Good job bringing that back around.
Bringing it back on track. On the radio.
I love it. But I have to say, Steve, as a Spurs fan, I think that's just awesome. We definitely have it covered. So I think one of the other aspects of this that I do want to bring in is that when we're looking at technology platforms to reach fans, as we said at the outset, that obviously it has to be that we're starting from whatever content we're looking at, where are those fans and where are they congregating the most? But part of this conversation and why I wanted to have it was I think that there are some amazing platforms like Blab, like Periscope, like Meavy that are coming out that allow the fans to do the communication back in a way that even Facebook doesn't allow, because you can't, it's a resource issue on the IP holder side. As Jonathan, you and I know, we've run into this at Fox, at Warner Brothers, at Dark Horse, who has, God love them, 3 people running their social campaign, or any of the number of people
Warner
that
Brothers.
we've talked to. Yeah, Warner Brothers. I mean, they're doing an amazing job of building up their internal resource, but Elise Chung over there is still dealing with 5 people total. And that's to cover everything, producing and community management. So I want to talk a little bit about where do we think the best technology and platforms are for that community management where the fans get to actually speak back with the content holders, if the content holders are smart enough to be there.
Right.
No offense to all of my friends at the studio side.
But again, I want to broaden it so that it's not just speaking back. It's being able to participate, whether it's active or passive.
And I should say participate, because I mean that whole spectrum of fan art or contests or conversations or fan fiction. I think that there's, let's back up. Historically, with Usenet groups and forums and sites like Gateworld, that Stargate was for decades with, yeah, Steve, we're talking absolutely transmedia. It's, I think, looking in this day and age as a content holder, and that's what Jonathan and I do, is we consult with content holders on how to reach the fans. It is crucial that you're not looking at just one particular platform to reach your fan base, because the fan base is not going to be in just one area. They're not going to be on one platform. They're not going to be just on Facebook. And I think it's, as has been evidenced by some who have stumbled, it's arrogant to assume that you just have a male audience or an 18 to 24 audience. And so that you've got to look at those different platforms about how to reach all aspects, the whole spectrum. But to go back to your point, the participation, what are some exciting platforms that you think are coming right now? Periscope's still new, Blab's still new. I don't know if brands have certainly, to some degree, gotten involved with Periscope, not with Blab as much, not from our end of the spectrum, not from an entertainment IP holder. But what are some others? Where are some great areas that are reaching out?
Yeah, so here's some thoughts that I have, that they're not the platforms aren't even using it as such. But if you look at Wishbone and Slingshot, Wishbone is for teen girls, and Slingshot is its counterpart for teen boys.
Right.
And it's effectively simple quiz, right? So which do you like? It's not even quiz. Right. It's what do you like? What do you prefer? Do you prefer Ferraris or Lamborghinis?
Right.
Sandals or boots? Those types of things, which are really mindless. But I think that if handled the right way, if we're talking about franchise, hell, if you're talking about Batman versus Superman, if you're talking about anything where you want to get something, into the lexicon of the fans, that could be something that's really compelling, and nobody's using it that way.
I know, A/B testing, right, Steve? It's Jonathan, that's something that it's very hard to convince IP holders in general that they need to be spending the time, which is my big thing, but spending the time and spending the effort and money to reach fans in these areas, and let alone do A/B testing. I mean, that's half the time they get scared off.
Right. It's set up for it. I mean, right? So, hell, even when we were talking about doing, just from a traditional marketing thing where you're doing A/B testing on what's your messaging, all that type of stuff, there isn't a lot in the social realm for marketers to do a true A/B testing of what works better. And too often, I find in social, it's about what's my content strategy. I need to put this out on this day and this out on this day, and then it's almost like, okay, we distributed and you don't even look at how something was manipulated, and you don't put that little thing in context of, oh well, one person said this, so we're going to kill it all.
Like, right, and then you get bogged down in production. And you get very bogged down in production. And I'd like to bring in Steve, actually, because I want to talk to him a little bit about the cyberpunks, dystopia, and sci-fi. So, Steve, if you want to come in, we've unlocked the seat. So, one of the, I think, greatest opportunities right now that I haven't seen since you and I started. So, to give a little bit, because there's some people in here that we haven't met before. You and I have been doing this for 20 some odd years. And a lot of what we have seen has been one or two platforms, one or two avenues to reach these fans, to really be able to engage with them. And I hate to keep using the word engage, but to have a conversation with them, to have them give us content back, for them to use your word, to really participate with the people that they're following, with the show that they're following. And I think I've never seen such a broad spectrum of opportunity for fans to engage as right now. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hello there. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
I'm making a big assumption by thinking you're in Australia.
England.
England. Oh, great. Cool.
So he's a real Spurs fan, as opposed to
London.
As opposed to us that rarely get to go to a match. Sorry.
Right.
Proper terminology.
We're just Yanks.
Well, I was born in London, and when we lived in London for my first 20 years, I went to White Hart Lane, but since then I live in Bournemouth on the south coast.
Wait, so and you're not rooting for Bournemouth?
So just lost to Arsenal 2-0. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for those 88 seconds, those 88 seconds were killers in the first half.
I know it was. Well, and you should be rooting for Bournemouth. My goodness, they talk about scrappers. Get themselves out of relegation. They're up with the big boys.
They are. They're doing fantastically well, and it's my father's team. But the thing is, you see, I was born in London, and the great rule is you don't change teams.
Oh, no, that's true. Well,
that is true.
And there are so many years where I've been hated as a Chelsea fan. So I've never, and I'm an Oakland Raiders fan. So you can tell there's a theme that goes on with the teams that I've chosen. So, Steve, I think it's fascinating talking about cyberpunk and dystopia sci-fi fans, because Jonathan and I have been doing sci-fi for a long time. And reaching that fandom is in many ways very easy to reach them initially. But to keep that audience, to not piss them off, to really truly be able to say honestly to them and transparently, this is who we are, this is the content we've got, we really want to have conversations with you, is difficult if you're the community manager with an IP content holder who can't afford for you to sustain. And the minute that you are just shilling a product with that audience, they're gone. They're done. That's it.
Wow.
It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Sorry, can you just define IP? I don't know what you mean by that.
Oh, sorry. Intellectual property. So content holders. Okay. The people who, like you are a content holder. Content. Yep. So you're writing a script and an animation. So you and whomever you distribute it with would be legally the intellectual property, but you are the creator, the content holder.
Yeah. And please educate me, because I'm learning. That particular audience, they're different to the other sci-fi people in that they're rebellious. Would you say there's that
very
street?
Yeah, very, and it's really interesting because it's, Jonathan and I have just started this Geeks with Gray Hair Blab in the past 3 months. And one of the reasons that we've started it is that, 1, we love to talk. 2, we love talking with each other. And then 3, we have found that our frustration level has been very high with a lot of these content holders, the publishers, the studios, the video game publishers, because there are very, very many people individually within those that are willing to try to get a hold of the audience, but they don't know how to spend the time, or they don't have the money or the resources to really understand the incredibly strict delineations within sci-fi, within quote unquote the geek world, within comic books. And they have a tendency to lump them together. And sports is another, just like we were talking last night, Jonathan, about casual fans and dedicated fans. Those are very easy terms to just throw out as if it means something all of a sudden. And they don't take the time to understand that a cyberpunk dystopian sci-fi fan is radically different from a fantasy sci-fi fan. And they're not looking for the same things. And they're not looking for the same type of content. And so if you are so arrogant or, ignorant to throw anything out there to see if it sticks, you're going to piss them off. And they're gone. They're done. So I think for you as a creator, the easiest way for you to make sure that you reach those particular audiences is to be incredibly honest, especially the cyberpunk. Just brutally honest. Hi, guys. I'm a new author. I'm a new script writer. This is what I'm doing. I would love in the future to be able to talk with you about what you think. And what you start to do is you build your own army. And individually, you reach out to them and you show them a couple of pages privately, not on a forum.
And here's something else. You talk about the difference in sci-fi, and I mean, to me, cyberpunk is very visual. It's extremely visual.
Yeah,
right.
It's a fashion.
So if you don't,
for one thing,
it's a fashion. It's fashion.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
So it's so we talk cyberpunk. Let's talk punk.
Right.
And what's the thing about it? Was all about the way you held yourself, the way you looked, the way the fashion was, and it almost was like the content was so secondary. In terms of music, punk music, right? Okay. And I don't want to say or generalize that cyberpunk is the same, because certainly story is something that makes the difference.
Right.
But I think that it's that esoteric look and feel that needs to be solid and consistent. I feel like I'm making too much noise in this edit bay. People are like, I'm like getting calls like, what's going on in there? The door is opening. Like,
hey, it's exciting. Come on, we've got good stuff going on.
But so Steve, like I would be having in my head, what am I going to do to support my product, and to make it so that there is that content out there. And since it is so much about the fashion, it's so much about the look, it's so much about that, what are those supporting things that can be put out there, to the point that Jenny made about having that, certainly on social, you have to have that, whereas creators never had that opportunity before the past few years, right? And so
you Jonathan, you came in and out. So you said, as to what Jenny said, and then it skipped to creators haven't had that in the past few years. So what did you say in between there? Well,
you've already said it, so you should know, right?
No, I forget. I said a lot because I talk.
Just to...
Oh, you're coming in and out.
Breaking up.
Yep. He's talking about talking directly to your constituents, that don't let somebody else, whoever your distributor or publisher is, don't let them take over. I would guess, as a cyberpunk sci-fi author, screenwriter, that you yourself are a fan in many ways.
Oh, Blade Runner changed my life.
Okay.
Your constituents directly.
Then that's what you want to make sure, that passion. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm comfortable having these conversations is that I passionately feel loyalty to my geek audiences, because I am a geek fan. And I've got my areas that I'm more passionate than others. For instance, I'm more fantasy sci-fi. I, in my 20s, was complete cyberpunk dystopia. That's all I read. And that's all I watched. Okay. And I've changed as I've gotten older. But therefore, I've got a loyalty across the spectrum of protection. I want to make sure that fans are protected, that they're not being used by this access, because it works both ways. This amazing spectrum and world and universe has been open to fans that we never had before, ever. And there's this amazing universe for creators like yourself, which I'm not. I'm not a creator. I'm a producer. So for the creators, what I love to be able to do is go and say, oh my God, you've got a world open to you that you've never had before. But it can be like opening the fire hose and trying to drink from the fire hose all at once if you're not careful. And you just have to be as brutally honest, like I said earlier, as you would be with yourself. If you like it, then say it. And if you don't hesitate to say that. Don't pretend to like something to reach a fan base. They'll know. It doesn't take much.
Yeah. That ain't going to happen with me.
No. And think about it this way. It's kind of like the golden rule. If you wouldn't want to hear it or have it shilled to you or said in a particular way as a fan, then don't do it. It doesn't work. That argument doesn't work sometimes with publishers who aren't fans themselves or IP holders. But for creators, that golden rule, that will save you every time. If you personally wouldn't want to do what you're about to say or shill or do, as a fan you wouldn't want it, then don't do it as a creator or a communicator with your fans.
Jenny, could could I impose and ask a few questions? Because it's so rare for me to come across another cyberpunk dystopian fan.
That's what we're here for. Go for it.
Oh, man. I hope we can have a few chats on this subject as time progresses.
We would love to. I love this. This is my passion. I love it.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So, look, I'm just going to explain what cyberpunk and dystopia means to me, and I wonder how many clauses, if you like, we match on.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So dystopia is about pain. It's I've come out of Blade Runner. To me, Blade Runner is one of the saddest movies ever made. I know people get inspired. They get inspired by the ending, but I don't. I get inspired by the world gone wrong. So does any of that resonate with you?
Yes, and I find dystopia in general and dystopian sci-fi. So let's take cyberpunk out of it because I think dystopian is a great description. It's very specific. It gives a very visceral image of what type of content you're talking about. That dystopian is obviously end of the world, a future apocalyptic world, whatever you want to call it. And therein, and by its very nature, is going to reflect or talk about pain, because there is no dystopia unless something's been destroyed. So I think the spectrum can be covered, and I think what's fascinating is that fans of Blade Runner found what they wanted to see in that dystopian future. Some found redemption and hope at the end. Others just saw how, like you said, how sad it was and the pain that he had to go through of self-identification or awareness. And that, to me, more than anything, is why dystopian will always come back around cyclically for fans, because we're human and unfortunately we repeat our mistakes. And so there's always that recession, there's always that pain, there's always that seeking out of redemption at the end of it, that this all might happen, but there's always hope at the end of it. So I think there's always pain in dystopia, but I do think there always has to be hope at the end, or what's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree. That's fascinating. Thank you.
Sure. So what are you writing? What are you doing?
So, I mean, you can see it. If you just click on my name, the sizzle reel is that bit.ly
cool. Link. See, and I was already following you because we must have been in some other blab where I saw your description.
Months ago, we followed each other,
Yep.
But we've never chatted.
No, we haven't. We've been in the same blabs. Okay, so I'll check this out right after. So, Jonathan, when we lost you, we just went into what we saw as the definition and description of, or what we felt dystopian sci-fi was. So what is it for you? What did you come, you can use Blade Runner as the example, but.
It's funny having, I listened to what you were talking about.
Oh, we've lost Jenny. That's
that was weird. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And right. The story. And I think to go back to our platforms too, that I think in this case I saw, so you've got your animation sizzle reel on YouTube. What, and you might have already done this, but what I think really has to happen is for you to be able to do the research. Where do you go as a fan, a cyberpunk or dystopian or just a sci-fi fan? Where do you go online? Where are you talking to people? What forums are you in? That's where you need to spend some time. Don't just jump in right away and say, hey, here I am, here's my new content. But spend some time doing that research to find out where your audience is. Find where those platforms, you know what your content is, you know what you want to reach out to those fans about. So look for where they are, and those platforms will become obvious as you start to find where your fans are. And you might already know because you are one. So you're already on here. So chances are you're other places online where those sci-fi fans are.
Yeah, I haven't spent enough time because if you want to animate something, you're going to go through a lot of pain. You're going to have to really want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm almost at the end of that phase now. So now I'm getting out there. But the thing that has occurred to me at this point, and please correct me if you think I've got the wrong end of the stick, is it's quite a dark world, and some of these people, they seem quite
dark.
Bound by.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Makes total sense. So how do you separate yourself and don't become the focus of some people who are living it too truly in a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no easy answer to that one. It's something that, knock on wood, I have to say I've been very blessed. I haven't had a lot of it. As a woman in a geek world, and having started in TV production and then computer science and setting up IT and then online and being a video game fan, there's always been a lot of inherent arrogance, condescension, and in many cases, overt problems. But I've been very lucky that male audience, because half the time I go to a comic book store, even here in San Diego, and I'm the only girl. So it's just part of the nature of the game. And so I've seen a lot of that darker end of it. I'll be honest, remember I said earlier, I've moved away from the cyberpunk dystopian. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I did was because of that. It just was too, like I said, thank God it was never dangerous to me, but it was too dark, too much. And it got to be a little bit too bleeding into the edges of my real life. And I didn't need that.
Yeah.
So
I can identify with that.
Well, you can't step out of it though. So what you have to do is, before you get too far into a community or a forum as the creator, you need to figure out what your boundaries are and what your defenses are going to be. And it could be something as simple as you've created a whole slew of separate accounts, and that's what you talk through, and you have zero connection. And it might mean that you have to start over. I have quite a few friends who have very quickly started over. They've nixed their personal accounts. There's nothing connected, and they've in some cases actually deleted personal accounts just to make sure that it's clean. There's no connection.
Yeah.
And that's the simplest thing to do. And then outside of that, you have to look at doing your research ahead of time. There might be an amazing forum, but if it's got a very vocal minority that's going to trespass on you, whether it's individually, personally, or just online, then maybe that's not worth it. And you need to not get involved or in any manner, shape, or form put yourself out there in that forum. And sometimes that means leaving behind an online fan base that really could have meant a lot because of that vocal minority. And you have to do it. Because if you're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh, so true. Mm. Right. Yeah. Hmm. Oh, that's a great point.
Okay. Yeah.
But you know, that's a great point, JT. It really is that if you've built up any kind of a relationship, which we would hope you would build that relationship, then chances are, as you've said, if you stay the course, they'll support you. And the and in this case, I think what you're talking about isn't just trolls. It's about people who unfortunately live the dystopian a bit too much. Um, they'll back off. If you've got that support
Okay.
group, they'll back off.
Okay. That's
Just,
interesting to know. I mean,
just
so far,
be careful.
the
I mean,
way
honestly, just be careful. That's really the
I
ultimate
did say
advice.
to my other half that, when we go for the promotion on this, I don't really want people to know that we're married, and I probably won't even be on Facebook. I just would rather. I always want the focus to be on the art, not so much the person. You might get interested in the person behind the story, but
Well,
what
you're
do you think?
that's
You're
tough. And
grimacing.
social fandom and online fandom, you don't get to make that separation and distinction. The minute that you've entered that, there are very few, there's always an exception. There are very few who have been able to, from this area, in a geek area, establish themselves in an online or social fandom and put themselves out there as a creator and been able to separate who they are from what their content is. Because fans want to know. That's part of the curiosity. They want to know where it comes from, why you write that way, especially for writers. Why have you written it? Where did those characters come from? Did those just spring wholly formed, or was it something that, like you said, that Blade
Yeah,
Runner effect, you know?
yeah, but there's a very big distinction between that, which is a thought process and a life lived, versus where you live, who you relate to,
But it's too
that
hard to
kind of stuff.
separate that in social fandom, unfortunately. And
Really?
yeah. Hmm. Right. 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 Yeah. Yep. And
So about
go ahead.
go on.
Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, I mean, so far, the way that I've dealt with trolls is I just never reply, no matter
Yeah.
how much they try and get under your skin.
Yep.
So do you think that tactic will work moving forward?
It's the one I've always used. And honestly, again, knock on wood, thank God, I've never had anything spill over. And I, Jonathan knows me well enough, and I'm sure Steve, you'll see as hopefully we can chat some more. I live pretty much life on my sleeve, so there's not a lot. I don't have an alias. I don't have a second persona, unless we look at Geeks with Gray Hair as that. But I just don't respond. I don't engage, and that ultimately is the best response across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Mm. And your fans usually will deal to JT, to go back to what you said earlier. If you've got that fan base already there, Steve, they'll deal with it. There's nothing like a mob to kick the vocal minority out. But
do you find though that the fan base is actually spread out over tons of forums?
No, I was going to say, in general, I find that once you've done the research, you start to see that there are the same fans that there might be, and this brings us back to the platforms. There might be some very small, different niches that are on different forums and different platforms, but for the most part, you're going to find that core group of fans that you want, that you need, are on a lot of the forums that you would want to be engaged in the first place. They go to multiple forums.
That's my point. It's multiple forums.
So then it doesn't matter which ones you're on. If you've got these same, I know that I'm on, 20 easily forums. So
that's what I mean.
But the authors, the creators that I like, they're only on one or two because they know that the same fans are going to multiple forums. And if they strike at the ones that have the best audience for them. So for instance, I follow Jim Butcher, Dresden Files. And he's on probably 4 or 5 different forums. And his wife, Shannon Butcher, is also a writer. She's on completely different forums. But because he's only on 1 or 2, I see the same fan base, though, that's on her forums and that's on Kevin Hearn, who does the Iron Druid series. So I'm on maybe 10 or 20 different forums, but those 2 authors can just be on 2 because that's where they know all the fans are going to be there. They don't need to worry about it. They don't have to cover 20 to get everybody they need.
Okay.
And that works.
Okay, it's just in the journey that I've taken, it's come via 3D animation more than writing to this stage, although I'm meeting people in the film world. But what I'm trying to say is something like cyberpunk dystopia draws from a variety of possible start points and therefore a variety of forums, perhaps. That's been my experience so far.
That's very true. Again, remember we were talking earlier, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You can't do it all. You personally don't have the time in the day. So that goes back to doing the research. Don't engage. It's the best advice I ever got early on was from a writer of a TV show that had a huge following. And he said, and I was coming from the management, from the project management producer side. And he said, if you just go out and you make sure that you go do the research, look at all the different forums, look at this tells you how old, look at the different websites and Usenet groups and bulletin boards and see where you need to be. Don't engage, don't talk, don't do anything. Just spend a couple of weeks and spend the time looking at where those fans are. Then narrow down where you're going to have the best relationship, where it's going to be one that you can actually spend time 6 months from now, not just to tell people about your script or the animation, but that you yourself would be interested in getting to have a relationship with these fans 6 months, a year, 2 years from now. Those are the ones to focus on. And then don't worry about the rest of them. Just do the research, find them, spend the time.
In other words, places where you could be a fan yourself.
Yes.
Enjoying other people's efforts.
Exactly.
And commenting on them. No.
Yep. And it's, and Steve, it feels overwhelming, but it's just like anything else. I'm sure you felt, especially with animation, I'm sure you feel that way sometimes, especially with the amount of time and effort that it takes. But the best way to do it is just to do it in the small chunks that you have to do, to take that one step at a time. And it really is about spend the time. And if you just carve out those little bits of time, you'll find where you would want to hang out yourself. And those will be your people. The people.
Very interesting. I'm loving the conversation. I can't believe finally we met people interested in cyberpunk and dystopia. It's been months.
We're here. We hide sometimes, I have to be honest, but we're here. We're here. We're always around. But it's so nice to talk with someone that is a creator. I love talking to the people who are actually creating the content as opposed to shilling it. So. Oh, nice. That was good. That was smooth.
Me too. Sorry about that. Yeah. Men can't multitask. Anyway, carry on.
I love that you both got completely distracted by her question. That was awesome.
I still don't know what Barb means.
It's Barb. It's an app, right? Isn't it? It's a 3D design app.
Oh no, I don't use that.
I think it's a publishing. I think.
I use a 3D application called Carrara, which is attached to the Poser world. It's the best one in my opinion. You do most, and then, if I may, I render with Octane, which is absolutely brilliant.
Is it?
Renderer.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know about that. Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Octane. Oh, look it up. I mean, when you see the real top guys use it, it's amazing. Real. It's real.
Oh, cool. Ooh, that's cool. Sorry, I got distracted. We are. And Steve, what we always do is, thanks Barb for the link. Check it out. What we always do, Steve, and you are welcome to join, is at the end of our blab, we always pull out one geek item that we're excited about that we want to share and tell the story. So, Jonathan, you go first because I had to move my laptop. I have to go get it. It's over in my other desk. Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is cool. Okay, so mine is because I worked on Predators with Robert Rodriguez, which is now, if you can believe it, Jonathan, it's 4 years ago. And at Comic-Con, when 3D printers were just coming, we decided to do a 3D printer with your own face. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but this is my Predator holding my head. So I'm very proud of this. And it has a position of lovely importance on my desk every day. So that's mine. So, Steve, do you have anything?
Wow, I mean, you put me on the spot there.
Sure.
I'll be prepared for next time, but thing, I guess the nearest thing I can get to geeky is, that's everything I do, of course, is some 3D object that I really enjoy.
I think you've actually even covered it when you've been talking about Octane. So you kind of have already covered it.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Buy
See,
it now.
You just geeked out on it. I love it. I love it. Well, guys, thank you so much for another great, fun Geeks with Gray Hair Blab. Steve and Barb, and I think Tommy had to go, but we're here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we'd love to see you. Next week, we'll be talking, are we talking about PR? I think we're talking about PR social fandom and where the gray lines are there. So. Right, and how you deal with both sides of that spectrum, the PR agencies and your social agencies, which, Steve, you will be coming up on soon as you start to sell your script. So you'll be navigating those jungles. Thanks, guys. Jonathan, thanks. Steve, thanks again. Have a great day.
You too.